Be cautious of fish sellers. In certain parts of Africa, this saying is well known, because not everything you buy in the market is meant to fill your stomach. Sometimes, the cost might involve your very destiny. The tale of Mama Ao makes this clear. By 6 a.m., long before the sun had fully risen over the town of Or, a line would already stretch in front of a small, humble shop in the center of the market. The queue, no matter how large, always remained orderly, curling into the next street, weaving between kiosks and roadside vendors. The reason? Fish. But not ordinary fish, Mama Ao's fish. A little boy tugged on his mother's wrapper. "Mama, are we late?" His mother frowned, hissing softly. "If I don't get that fish today, your father won't eat." A man behind them sighed. "That fish makes rice taste like stew. I don't know how she manages it." Another woman leaned forward, whispering, "Even my son, who hates fish, now gnaws the bones clean." The line inched forward. Though Mama Ao's shop was still closed, no one left. It was always like this. By 6 a.m., the queue was already packed. By 6:30, it spilled into another street. Yet no one complained. They all believed they were waiting for something extraordinary. Everyone in town had tasted her fish, and all agreed. It was unlike any other. Fresh every time. Tender as butter. Gleaming like polished river glass. And curiously, not once had anyone seen her calling out for customers. She never rang a bell, never begged, never even smiled too much. She simply sat, lifted the lid of her large iron cooler, and began selling. She weighed, she wrapped, she collected money, nothing more. And no matter how many people bought, she never ran out. Whispers spread. She couldn't be ordinary. Perhaps she had a freezer buried beneath the ground, or maybe her husband worked at a fish factory. But the truth was far deeper. It wasn't in the fish. It wasn't in her manner. It was hidden in the earth below her shop. And soon, that ground would give up its secrets. For now the queue only grew. Birds had just begun to sing in the sky, but in the market, everyone already knew. A day without Mama Ao's fish was a day your soup would mourn. So they waited, quiet, patient, hungry, because behind that shop door was something far greater than fish. And soon the whole town would know. It was a Monday. The sky rumbled. Huge trucks roared into the market, their heavy tires thundering like angry drums, belching smoke into the air. Men in yellow helmets jumped down, clutching papers and measuring tapes. "This market is changing," they shouted. "Old shops must go." The traders froze. Fear seeped into their bones. A woman hurriedly packed her tomatoes. Another man folded his umbrellas, weeping. "Where will I go now?" A pepper seller dropped to her knees beside her basket. "Please, officers, I just paid my rent last week." But the men in yellow paid no mind. They waved their papers and pointed to stalls. One after the other, shops were torn down. Wood splintered, nails snapped, doors fell like ashes after a battle. The market wept. But not Mama Ao. She stood firm in front of her little shop. Feet planted, eyes unyielding, hands pressed to her waist. One worker approached. "Madam, pack your things. We don't want any trouble." She stared at him silently, then said slowly, "You cannot touch this shop." The man frowned. "Madam, it's only a fish shop." Another added, "You're not the only one. We're all being moved." Still Mama Ao didn't budge. Her lips were dry, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand." The other traders began to murmur. "Why is she talking like that?" a young boy asked. "She thinks she's special," an old woman muttered. But Mama Ao didn't look at them. Or maybe she heard and simply didn't care. Her gaze was fixed on the ground, on what lay beneath her shop. One of the officers stepped closer. "We have orders. Move or we'll call the police." She gave no reply. Her body trembled, her hands shook, yet she clung to the doorpost. She would not let them through. Because under that shop, in the soil where ants crawled and roots tangled, there was something no eyes must ever see. But the men in yellow didn't know. To them, it was only wood and nails. So they pressed forward. Mama Ao's once strong voice grew faint, but still she stood, like a soldier without a weapon, bracing for the storm about to break. You see, before the fish, before the queues, before the town called her Mama Ao, the fish seller, her name was Iobi. She wore flat shoes, pinned her scarf carefully, and carried a bag that always smelled faintly of chalk and paper. She wasn't a seller at all. She was a teacher. And not just any teacher, but the finest one. She taught Class 3B at St. James Primary School. Her blackboard always gleamed spotless. Her songs turned multiplication into fun. She would sing, and her pupils would cheer. Auntie again. Abami cared deeply for her pupils, and they adored her in return. She used her own money to buy them biscuits. Even when her eyes ached with fatigue, she still marked their homework. She stayed long after school hours, guiding those who struggled. But one quiet Thursday, trouble arrived. Painted lips, pink ribbons, and a name, Tenny. She was the daughter of Chief Addict Burrow, a political powerhouse whose voice alone made people bend. Tenny took her seat in the second row, her bag gleaming, her shoes tapping loudly with each step. That day, Ayabami handed out a test. Heads bent low. Pens raced across pages, except for Tenny. Her eyes wandered left, then right. Then, slipping her hand into her sleeve, she pulled out a tiny sheet of paper. Abami spotted her. Calm and steady, she walked over, snatched the paper, and ripped it to pieces. Then in a firm, clear voice she declared, "You'll score 0, and you'll redo this test alone next week." A gasp escaped Tenny's lips. The class froze. Someone whispered, "Her father won't like this." Still Ayabami stood her ground. Rules were rules. Cheating was forbidden. Tears welled in Tenny's eyes. "I'll tell my daddy," she muttered. Unshaken, Ayabami simply replied, "Tell him." That evening, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up outside the school. Its tires rolled silently, but the fear it carried was deafening. The headmistress hurried out first, teachers trailing behind like scattered hens. Then the door opened, and out came Chief Adagoro, big belly, booming voice, and 2 phones clutched in one hand. "Where is the teacher who dared embarrass my daughter?" he barked. Fingers pointed. Ayabami stepped forward, hands trembling slightly. "I am, sir," she said. He eyed her coldly, as though she were a spoiled yam. "You'll lose your job. You think you can disgrace my child? You think you stand above her?" Her reply was soft but steady. "She cheated and I corrected her. That's my duty." Chief Adabor let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Not anymore," he snapped. And just like that, her teaching days ended. The chalkboard erased, the songs silenced. She walked home carrying her lesson notes as though they were stones. She didn't yet realize how long the road ahead would be. She humiliated my daughter. Chief Adek Burrow roared before the school board. His words struck like thunder, his voice like lightning. Teachers lowered their heads. The headmistress dabbed her forehead with a white handkerchief. No one defended Ayabami. Not a single soul. She was dismissed, no warning, no thanks, no farewell. With tears in her eyes, Abami whispered, "I did nothing wrong." But the headmistress only shook her head. "Your name is stained. You'll never teach in this local government again." She returned home with nothing but her red pen and lesson notes. She locked the door. She didn't cook, didn't speak. She only cried. Each day she sat by the window, watching children on their way to school. Every laugh pierced her chest. One evening her husband, Tund, gentle and soft-spoken, sat beside her. He took her hand and rubbed it slowly. "My wife," he said gently, "the classroom door is closed, but the kitchen door is still open." She turned to him. "What do you mean?" "You love cooking," he replied. "Everyone knows it. Try it. People must eat." For the first time in weeks, Ayabami managed a small smile. She decided to give it a chance. From Mama Rafiat down the street, she bought a second-hand cooler, its handle loose, its lid dented, but still serviceable. She cooked rice, fried golden plantain, prepared soft beans with palm oil and onions. She woke before dawn, sweating in the kitchen, scrubbing pots until her fingers wrinkled. Then, scarf tied, she balanced the cooler on a wheelbarrow and pushed it to the market gate. Her feet ached, but her hope was fresh. She called out, "Hot jollof rice, sweet beans, come and buy." But no one came. A woman sniffed the air and scoffed, "Your food has no aroma." A man waved dismissively, "Too watery." A girl dipped a finger, tasted it, then spat on the ground. "No salt." Shame stung Obami's eyes. She stayed till dusk, then pushed the heavy cooler back home. Tun met her at the door, helping her inside. She said nothing. The next morning she tried again, this time adding more pepper. Still no customers. People passed by as if she were invisible. They bought from others. Even the woman whose rice was burnt at the bottom still had customers. But not Obami. Days slipped into weeks. The sun scorched her skin. The insults scorched her spirit. She stopped calling out. She just stood silently at the gate, hoping. But in that market, food was never just food. It was your identity. Obami had become nothing more than a forgotten teacher, pushing around a rusty cooler no one wanted. Her business was gone. Her hope was slipping, but change was on the horizon. And it would begin, not with her own hunger, but with someone else's. That evening, the streets were hushed. The sky wept in light drizzles. Ayabami dragged her cooler forward, both hands gripping tightly. The wheel squealed with every turn, like an old man's aching joints. Her legs trembled. Sweat drenched her blouse. Inside, her heart felt as hollow as an empty pot. At the market, they had mocked her again, just as the day before, and the one before that. Her food remained untouched. She turned down a lonely road, wishing only to collapse at home. But there, beneath a wide mango tree, she saw them. An old woman in a torn wrapper, her eyes weary yet gentle, and a barefoot boy beside her, dusty and frail, his belly pressed flat against his ribs. The woman lifted her hand with effort. "Please, my daughter," she whispered, her voice brittle like dry harmattan air. "We have not eaten today. Can you spare a little?" Obami froze, her fingers tightening on the handle. She glanced at the woman, then at the boy who said nothing. His eyes, deep and empty, spoke louder than words. She opened the cooler. Steam escaped, carrying the scent of beans and pepper. She didn't take a spoon. She didn't reach for a plate. Instead, she pushed the entire cooler toward them. "Take it all. I can't drag it home again." The old woman's eyes widened. "All of it?" Ayabami nodded. "All." She bent down, untied the cooler, left behind the wheelbarrow, and turned to leave. But slowly, the old woman rose. Like a leaf carried by breeze, she reached for Obami's hand. Her fingers were cold, but the touch was warm. "You carry a good heart," she said softly. Obami gave a small smile, one that never reached her eyes. "I don't need anything. Just eat. Let the boy eat." But the woman didn't release her hand. Instead, she looked straight into Obami's eyes and said, "When the time is right, return to this tree." Obami frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman only smiled, her worn teeth dim but her smile glowing like gold. She nodded once, then sat back down beside the boy. Obami lingered for a moment, the wind tugging at her scarf. Then she walked away, without her cooler, without food, without hope. Behind her, the old woman watched, while the boy licked beans from his fingers, smiling as though he had tasted paradise. From that day forward, the mango tree waited. 2 weeks crept by, slow as a tortoise. Obami could not erase the memory of the woman under that tree. She tried, but the words, "When you are ready," echoed inside her like a drum in an empty room. Then, one early morning before the rooster crowed, she tied her scarf, left the house with an empty stomach, dry lips, and only one thing moving her forward. Hope. She returned to the mango tree. And there she was, the old woman, waiting, as if she had never left. This time, she held a calabash. Without a word, she rose, turned, and began walking. Obami followed silently. They passed through quiet roads, narrow bush paths, across damp earth and sleepy grass until they reached the river's edge. A giant tree leaned over the water, its roots buried deep, its branches swaying without wind. The old woman knelt, set the calabash on the ground, and began to speak. Not in English, not in any language Obami knew. Her words sounded like whistling mixed with flowing water. The river stirred. The surface trembled. And then from its center a woman rose. Her skin was dark as midnight rain. Her eyes gleamed like stars in a cave. Her hair floated behind her like seaweed in a dream. She stood above the water, her feet never touching the ground. Her voice came low and sharp, like a blade hidden in song. "What do you want?" Obami's lips shook. Her eyes widened. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. "I only want to feed my family," she whispered. For people to buy my food. To care for my husband. To stop crying every night. The spirit studied her, then nodded. Listen well. The wind stilled. Even the birds silenced. Abami's heartbeat thundered in her chest. The spirit's eyes glowed brighter as her words slowed. If you are ready to sell fish, the whole town will come to you. But there is a price. Abami's mouth opened, but no sound came. She only nodded. Good, said the spirit. She raised her hand. From the river rose a small black box, square and cold. She floated closer. Each morning at 4 a.m., come to this tree. A sack of fish will be waiting. Take it. Sell it. You will not beg. You will not call. They will come. Tears gathered in Abami's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. But the spirit's face hardened. Bury this box beneath your shop. Deep where sunlight cannot reach. As long as it remains hidden, your blessing will flow. You will never lack. The town will eat from your hands. Abami held the box. It was strangely warm. Then the spirit's next words froze her blood. But the day this box touches the sun, when light falls upon it, your children will die, one by one before your eyes. Her breath caught. Her heart stopped. The spirit leaned closer. If you ever reveal this secret, even in a whisper, your breath will vanish, your tongue will stiffen, and your body will fall lifeless. The wind howled again. The river swallowed the spirit. The old woman rose, turned to Abami and said, Go now and never forget. Abami looked down at the box in her hands. She did not weep. She only nodded and walked away. That day, Ayabami left behind her old self and returned as Mama Ayuk. Before the roosters crowed, before the stars faded, she dug a hole behind a new shop tucked between two old stalls. She placed the black box inside, still warm in her palms, and covered it with sand. She pressed bricks over it, then stood tall, wiping the dirt from her hands. She said nothing. She prayed nothing. She whispered softly, Let this succeed. And it did. By 4 a.m. the next morning, she returned to the tall tree by the river. The night was still heavy, the sky black, the air sharp with cold. And just as the spirit had promised, a sack of fish lay waiting beneath the tree. Large, plump, shining as if they had just been pulled from the water. She hauled the sack back to her stall, slid the fish into the cooler and waited. She did not shout. She rang no bell. By 6 a.m., a woman passing by stopped, sniffed the air, and turned back. Are you selling fish? She asked. Ayabami gave a small nod. The woman bought too. Soon after, another customer came. Then another. By 7 a.m., 5 people were outside her shop. By 7:30, the line stretched past the neighboring stall. By the following week, her queue was longer than the sugar sellers. Whispers circled the market. That new fish woman, her fish is so sweet. She never runs out. Even her tilapia smells like chicken. By the second week, her name was known everywhere. Not Ayabami anymore, but Mama Ao. Men waved as she passed. Women greeted her warmly. Even the traders who once dismissed her now gave her respect. She dressed in fine wrappers that swayed when she walked. Her husband, Tunde, bought a brand new sewing machine with her earnings. Their home filled with laughter and the smell of pepper soup. Hunger was gone. Shame had left. But even in the midst of plenty, even as people clapped and called her blessed, Mama Ao never forgot. Every morning while sweeping her stall, she paused at one corner, where the black box lay hidden beneath the floor. She never bent down, never lingered too long, just brushed the broom lightly and moved on. Yet in her chest, the spirit's voice echoed, If this box ever meets the sun. And whenever her children laughed or rushed into her arms, she held them a little tighter, knowing that no matter how sweet the fish smelled, a price still waited underground, silent, watching. Back in the market, her stall was always surrounded. One day, contractors arrived. Madam, we're sorry, they said. Orders are orders. You must leave or we'll call the police. She stayed seated, silent. Moments later, 2 policemen came. They tried to move her gently. She resisted, but when one mentioned handcuffs, she rose quietly and sat under a nearby tree trembling. The bulldozer roared forward. One strike, the walls cracked. Another, the roof crumbled. Dust rose like fog, choking the air. And then the ground split. From beneath the stall, something dark and square pushed upward. A box. A child at the front pointed. Look. What is that? Heads turned. Eyes widened. Some edged closer. Before anyone could answer, 3 piercing screams shattered the air. From 3 corners of the market, her children fell. One near the yam sellers. One by the pepper stalls. One at the gate. They convulsed, twisting, their mouths open in silent cries. Their bodies shook, then fell still. 2 boys. 1 girl. No warning. No sound. They dropped like clothes torn off a line by the wind. Panic erupted. People fetched water, pulled off shoes, shouted names. Samuel. Debo. Ronk. But the children lay motionless. Their eyes empty, their chests unmoving. And all 3 bore the same face. Same skin. Same lips. All of them mirrors of Mama Ao. One woman gasped. Those are her children. Another shouted. Call her. Bring Mama Ao. The officers froze. The workers stopped. Even the bulldozer fell silent. But she had already heard. Mama Ao ran. Faster than a mother's fear, faster than wind through cassava leaves. She collapsed beside her children, clutched their hands, shook their shoulders. Wake up. Please wake up. She pressed her face against their chests. Nothing. No heartbeat. No warmth. Her cries rose above the market, louder than thunder, sharper than grief. Somebody help me. Please. The crowd only watched, frozen. Mama Ao cradled her eldest like a baby, stroked her daughter's cheeks, clung to her youngest son, whispering, I kept the secret. I never told. I never told. But the children did not move, because the box had seen the sun, and the spirit had kept its promise. The debt was collected. All 3 lives, without mercy. Voices in the crowd rose. What happened? Why did they fall? Mama Ao's tears streamed endlessly as she shook their still bodies. Her lips quivered. Her hands trembled. At last, too heavy with grief to hide, she spoke. Her voice cracked low, broken. She told them everything. The old woman by the river, the spirit, the sack of fish, the black box buried beneath her stall. The market listened in silence. Some gasped, some crossed themselves, others stepped back in fear. Then a single voice asked, What is the name of this spirit? Mama Ao lifted her head. She opened her mouth to answer. But no words came. Her eyes widened. Her hands flew to her throat. She gasped, convulsed, and with one final shudder, fell lifeless beside her children. A scream tore through the market. Then silence, thick, suffocating. No one moved. Dust still hung in the air. Fear spread like fire in dry grass. Some whispered, Cover the box. Others cried, Take it away. But no one touched it. By evening, government officials sealed the site. No one was allowed near her broken stall again. The next day, the town buried Mama Ao and her children side by side. A priest stood over their graves, hands lifted, voice ringing like thunder. Be careful what you envy. Be careful what you eat. Beware of sellers who never run out. From then on, Ora carried the tale like a scar. Whenever a shop became too popular, whenever buyers rushed with unusual hunger, whispers stirred. Check beneath their floor. Make sure no box is hidden. And so the warning lived on, passed from parent to child. Beware of fish sellers. Not everything sold is for the stomach. Sometimes your destiny is part of the price. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, pass it on to friends and family, and remember to subscribe for more African folk tales like this one. Thank you.